Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We're glad you've chosen to click in with us today. It's been a while. It's been a while since we have been in the Journal's West Tupelo branch office here, and Logan down there in the Starkville branch office, and we're kind of almost back in routine at overlap season, getting down a little bit after the Grove Bowl on Saturday for Ole Miss. We'll be down to one sport that we really focus on when we talk about the overlap season. There are other individual sports that in the spring that we'll work with from time to time. Ole Miss softball playing really well right now. We'll get to them, and there are always some track, golf, tennis that are excelling and competing at a high level. We'll catch these sports as well. But we talk this overlap season, it's usually football, basketball, baseball, and women's basketball if they're playing at a high level, as State has done. But we're getting down to a little more manageable load there in the overlap season. And Logan has not had the chance yet to go buy groceries after being on the road with the Mississippi State women. Logan, how are you, man?
First, I'll tell you what, it feels good to be home. I've been crisscrossing the country for about 3 weeks now, and I've been on the road a lot more than I've been home. And we were talking before we went live here that, I haven't bought groceries in over 3 weeks. Since you and I were in Nashville together at the SEC men's basketball tournament, I have yet to buy groceries, and got to go do that and buy a car tag, which expired while I was on the road. So just a lot of little tasks that happen, when you're out of town, and, I've got to take care of that kind of stuff and, just try to find time to get that done. But I've been crisscrossing the country. Went from Nashville back to Starkville to San Jose, California, San Jose back to Starkville to cover basketball, and then turn right around and go from Starkville to Portland, Oregon, and then back. So it's been a lot to keep up with.
Been everywhere, man. Like Johnny Cash used to say. Baseball, the Bulldogs are on the road at Tennessee. The Rebels are at home against Florida. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Spring football, State still kicking along. Ole Miss is about to wrap it up with the Grove Bowl on Saturday. A little bit of a different format for Matt Luke in the sense of how he has divided up the 15 practices. He'll keep one. There'll be one more practice for Ole Miss after the Grove Bowl that Luke wants to use as a teaching/correction practice from the Grove Bowl. And wants to get a lot of video from that practice that he'll be able to give to the players as they are not under the watch of the coaches as much, and be able to give that video to players, the newcomers coming into the program. He expects them to watch it and kind of be ahead of the game a little bit when August practice starts. So we'll talk those sports in a little bit. Logan, let's start with basketball. Ole Miss has been done for a couple of weeks, got to the NCAA tournament, lost in the first round, big loss to Oklahoma. We're not going to recap that game per se, but there was basketball news this week for the Ole Miss men and women, contract news, as Yolette McPhee-McEwen's contract was extended. Kind of a nod, a notice that, look, we understand the shape of the program that you took over, and we recognize the work that you guys did this year by playing hard and by picking up a couple of additional SEC wins, small steps for a program that was really just built from scratch with only 4 returning players, and not all of those contributors from last year. So you let McPhee-McEwen making small steps with the Ole Miss women and working hard and just really showing a lot of energy. She was rewarded with a contract extension. Kermit Davis was rewarded with a big raise, $350,000 up from his original contract, going from $2.5 to $2.85 million per year. The new Kermit Davis contract, which also extends to 2023. And the incentives were changed a little bit, but not much. They basically remained the same. He picked up a couple of those incentives this year, Logan, by reaching the NCAA tournament and also by being named Coach of the Year in the SEC, as he was by both the AP and the SEC coaches. So news for Kermit Davis there. Big news before the contract, Logan, for basketball was the commitment of Sean Robinson, a 6'10" power forward out of Arizona. A lot of other folks seeking his commitment, and he's rated as a 3-star guy right now. But if you look at that 247 Sports composite list and others, I'm sure, Logan, you see, you working in the industry, having worked there, you know how these recruits are rated. While there's a star, there's also a number. So at present, this guy is rated as a 3-star recruit, his number being 90 point something like that, which puts him on the high end of 3 stars. And the thought by those who cover recruiting is that when he is reevaluated as a forward, because he's not been evaluated as a forward at present, the thought is that he'll be, a high 4-star or maybe a 5-star recruit. Bottom line is he's a big get for Kermit Davis, and another sign in addition to the signs on the court this season with 20 wins and an NCAA tournament berth. Another sign that program is rebuilding and moving forward. So anyway, that's kind of the basketball news for Ole Miss of late. Logan, tell us about all your travels. And, it's a little bit of a different culture out there in Portland. I saw some of your Twitter photos of the recreational cannabis locations, shops there. So just tell us about your time in Portland.
Well, yeah, I guess I need to start with San Jose. It was different out there as well, but
had to go all the way to San Jose first. That's right.
It was an experience trying to get out there. It just the plane travel and all that stuff, and then you get out there to San Jose, and it's different. I enjoyed it. I actually stayed about 25 miles away. I was up in I forget the name of the little town that I stayed in, but I had to go up and down a mountain every day to get to San Jose, and some winding roads, and it was just it was different. But Mississippi State played Liberty, and it was a game they should have won. They just had a 7-point lead with about 5 minutes to go and just couldn't get home with it. They got Liberty had a player get hot and started hitting a bunch of threes, and Mississippi State started missing at that point. And next thing you know, Mississippi State eliminated and going home. So, and now you kind of have to see where things stand with this team. This week, Reggie Perry, Mississippi State's 5-star talented freshman that they had, played power forward, started at power forward for most of the back end of the season. He's announced that he's declaring for the NBA draft, and that's really nothing new for Mississippi State. They had 4 players declare for the draft last year, and all of them came back. And I expect that's what Reggie Perry will do. I think he's going to get some draft feedback, and I think he'll be back. I didn't see enough from him to think that he would be a one and done type of player. But I do think he has a pro future. I just don't know that it's going to be next year. And then you have to look at Lamar Peters, who's a junior, should have 1 more year of eligibility left in college. He's a guy that's kind of flirted with the NBA in years past. He's had some really high draft grades at some of these summer camps. And NBA teams are intrigued by him. So we'll have to see if he sticks around at Mississippi State or if he turns pro. I don't know that he's got a future in the NBA. I do think he has a future probably overseas and probably going to make a lot of money in Europe someday, but you really never know how those situations go. He could go out to the draft combine and have a really good showing and get on somebody's radar. But, they really like his game, and they think it translates well to the NBA level. So we'll have to kind of see and watch him and see how things go with him. But, Nick Weatherspoon, who missed the last stretch of the season for Mississippi State with that suspension, he's tweeted out that he's coming back to Mississippi State. Now, we haven't talked to the coaching staff about that to see where his standings go as far as the basketball team, but he says he's coming back to Mississippi State to school at least. So, I think that's an encouraging sign for Mississippi State for next year. And then you switch over to the women going to Portland. When they announced that Mississippi State was going to be the number 1 seed in Portland, I knew that was what was going to happen. Was Mississippi State was going to meet up with Oregon in the Elite Eight there. There just really wasn't a whole lot of competition that could compete with those two teams anyway in that section of the bracket. And I tell you what, Parrish, that arena there in Portland, it was 11,500 and something in that arena on this past Sunday. And tell you what, probably over 11,000 of them were Oregon Duck fans. It was 112 miles from Oregon's arena to the Moda Center and there in Portland. So it was just packed with Oregon fans, and it felt like a true road game for Mississippi State. Even though Mississippi State was the home team, the designated home team, it was really it was a home game for Oregon, and they fed off that crowd. Ended up winning that game by 4. Oregon just shot the lights out of that place. They hitting threes. They shot 50% from 3. They were 13 of 26 in that game from 3-point range. Shot over 70% there in the fourth quarter. They went into the fourth quarter tied Mississippi State and Oregon. I forget what the score was. I think it was maybe 59-59 going into the fourth quarter, and then Oregon shot like 71% in the fourth quarter and ended up winning that game by 4 points. And it's devastating for a team anytime you lose, especially when you're that close to the Final Four. Mississippi State was trying to make its third straight trip to the Final Four, and Oregon had never been there. Oregon had been in the Elite Eight for the past couple of years and just couldn't get over that hump. They finally got a game right there in their backyard, and they took advantage of it. And Oregon's a very good basketball team. Mississippi State lost 3 games this year. 2 of those games were to Oregon. And Mississippi State went up to Eugene back in December and lost to Oregon, and played a lot better against Oregon this time around in the NCAA tournament, but still fell short. And, it was a remarkable coaching job this year by Vic Schaefer, just the job that he did, replacing 4 starters from last year's team. Obviously got some transfer help in there to help replace some of those starters. Ended up losing one of his starters, Chloe Bibby, in that South Carolina game earlier this year. All indications are her rehab's doing really well. She's going to be back from Mississippi State and be a key cog in next year's team. He's got a great recruiting class coming in next year. He signed his first McDonald's All-American, the Michigan McDonald's Player of the Year. So it's going to be a really good team again next year. Just going to have to rebuild, and that's kind of what he did this year, and going to have to be what he does again next year.
Yeah, it looked like watching that Oregon-Mississippi State game on TV that once Oregon started hitting those threes and State went out on them, that they really couldn't stop the dribble penetration. It looked like that was something that hurt the Bulldogs down the stretch in that game. Shifting gears a little bit, Logan, let's talk baseball. Ole Miss at home against Florida. It's Grove Bowl weekend. Rain chances all around. We'll see if that impacts the schedule. I know the Bulldogs are at Tennessee. Ole Miss, Logan, they look pretty average the first 2 weekends of SEC play. They were hitting just 223 against the league, and that was against Alabama and Missouri, teams that I think are improved, but not going to they're just not in the upper echelon of the SEC. And the Rebels won 1 series and lost 1. Went on the road to Arkansas in a much tougher environment, the number 8 team, and won the series and won the last 2 games to do it, and hit much better. Hit 296 on the weekend in Fayetteville. And so you think you could look at that big series win at Arkansas and use it to kind of build to Florida, but in between you have this head-scratching loss to a 5-win North Alabama team that is in its first year of Division I competition. The Lions, formerly of the Gulf South Conference, now competing in the Atlantic Sun Conference. They'd won just 5 on the year, and they come in here and they just slap it around the park, 14 hits. And, you look and the Rebels had 10 hits, and you think they could have scored a few more runs. And, but it just wasn't a good day anywhere on the mound, at the plate, or in the field. The Rebels did have 10 hits, only 3 for extra bases, and 2 of those came after there was one out in the ninth when they were already down 10-4. So not a good day all around. That's that kind of game, Logan, where you always see the coaches trying to get at bats, use players who haven't gotten to play a lot, and certainly there was some of that going on. But round about the middle innings, Mike Bianco started bringing out his weekend relievers, guys like Austin Miller and Houston Roth, and they weren't getting anybody out either. So it was just, it was one of those things where after the game, we didn't talk to any of the players. They scattered quickly. But talking to them a little bit in the days after, the response you get is that's baseball. And yeah, there's some truth in that. But a mature team with so many returning players should be able to focus better than what we saw from the Rebels against North Alabama. Now, that being said, I've seen Ole Miss teams, Logan, I know you've covered teams as well, that compete at a high level and win games on the weekends, win some SEC series, but the midweek is just not as easy for these teams because the depth is not there, and certainly the depth is not there for Ole Miss pitching right now. But one guy who has been hitting well has been Gray Kessinger, and he is someone who has come on, the junior shortstop. Was hitting just .215 on March the 8th after going 0 for 5 against UAB. Since then, he's gotten his average up to 283. He's hitting .360 for the month or for 6 weeks, and had a big weekend at Arkansas going, he hit .428, had a couple of doubles, had a big RBI double, drove in the game-winning run in Game 2 in the ninth inning on Saturday, and then hit well again on Sunday against Arkansas. He was 1 for 3 and scored a couple of runs against UAB. So it's good to see Gray Kessinger coming on for Ole Miss. Playing a Florida team right now that's 4-5 in the conference. They're not pitching it as well as we've seen from the Gators in the past, and we'll see. Ole Miss certainly needs to get back on track in the conference. They're 5-4, but if they're going to compete for the upper tier, get in that top 4 in the SEC where you get the 2-day bye in the conference tournament, we'll see if they can get there or not. They're going to have to start winning series like this. And, you would think at home your hitters would be a little more comfortable. Maybe they can take advantage of that Florida pitching a little bit. We'll see. But a big weekend for Ole Miss with the baseball team.
Yeah, Mississippi State actually took 2 or 3 from Florida to start SEC play, and Mississippi State's played well. The majority of the season. They lost their first series though this past weekend. Had LSU come into town. Mississippi State, ranked number 2 in the country, had LSU kind of stumbling into the. They lost a midweek game to McNeese State, so LSU was stumbling a little bit, hadn't hit the ball very well most of the season, and they come in and take 2 or 3 from Mississippi State. Mississippi State wins the first game on Thursday night, and then LSU comes back and wins 2 games on Friday and Saturday pretty convincingly. So Mississippi State, may have been stumbling a little bit, but you saw them bounce back in the midweek. In Mississippi State played your alma mater there, Parrish, Louisiana Monroe. Mississippi State scores 21 runs on 19 hits in that game.
I saw that. Not a lot of resistance from the Warhawks there.
Not at all. And what was kind of strange in Mississippi State, it was the most runs they've had since 2010 in a ball game, 21 runs. But what was strange is they scored them in 3 innings. They had 7 runs, and then they had 10 runs, and then they had 4 runs. It was kind of a strange situation where that, they only scored and they batted around in 3 innings, and that was kind of it. But it was definitely more than enough. So we'll have to see how they take that momentum up to Knoxville this weekend. It's going to be a big weekend for Mississippi State. Tennessee right now leads the country in ERA, and most of that comes from their bullpen. So Mississippi State's going to need to tack on some runs on those starters who have pitched okay. But like I said, most of those low ERAs come from the Volunteers bullpen. So Mississippi State's leading the SEC in batting average right now, so they're hitting the ball very well. They've been able to pitch it pretty well most of the time. That's really the first time we've seen the freshman JT Ginn struggle basically all year. LSU got to him a little bit. They had some miscues in the field, from what I understand, Parrish. I didn't get to watch the Friday or Saturday games during the LSU series, because I was up in Portland trying to take care of some basketball business up there. So I didn't get to see those games. But from what I understand, Mississippi State had some miscues in the field. So they need to play a clean series against Tennessee this weekend on the road. Anytime you go on the road, it's just so hard to scratch out wins there. So Mississippi State needs to do that and get some momentum built back up and kind of hold serve right now. They're down to number 8 in the rankings. They slid 6 spots in the rankings. So Mississippi State needs to get back on track. Jake Mangum has an opportunity though to become Mississippi State's all-time hits leader this weekend. He goes into the weekend 2 hits behind Jeffrey Ray to become the all-time hits leader. Jake Mangum with 333 career hits. He's got a chance. He's 19 hits behind Eddie Furness, who's the SEC's all-time hits leader. So Jake Mangum closing in on an SEC record there, and he should be able to get there pretty quickly. With 19 hits remaining, he went 5 for 6 in Wednesday night's win over Louisiana Monroe. So he's hitting the ball really well right now.
Yeah, all those hits against ULM, though, Logan, should come with an asterisk. So anyway, we'll see. Jake Mangum has had a great career. It's not surprising to see him closing in on this record at this point in his career. We got a few minutes left, Logan. Football, I know you haven't seen the Bulldogs much. Grove Bowl is coming up, and I'll tell you, folks, if you're excited about getting a good look on Saturday at this Rich Rodriguez run-based spread option, you need to adjust your expectations, because it's going to be very vanilla in play calling for Ole Miss. Matt Luke has already told us this. Number one, he's kept a really tight lid on practice. I'm kind of looking forward to the Grove Bowl myself, because it'll be the first time that I've seen the Rebels in an 11-player formation. The first time we've seen any kind of 11 on 11. We get in for a little bit of stretch and that sort of thing, and that's fairly typical around the league. But I think Matt Luke and the Rebels, I know there's a little more intent on trying to keep things quiet right now, because he says to us, I mean, look, we're not going to show much in that spring game. We're going to keep it close to the vest. We think this can be an advantage for us right now, at least in the early part of the season with 2 new coordinators. Our opponents can look at Rich Rodriguez and Mike McIntyre, and they can guess what we're going to do. They can guess what we're going to do based on what these guys have done at other places, but they're not going to know. There's no body of work with these guys as coordinators at Ole Miss. And so, as I've written before, the most important words in coverage of spring football is "he said," because we haven't seen these teams really, and we're really just covering on what we're told from the coaches and from the players, and what we're told is basically what you would expect. There's a much greater emphasis on the run right now for Ole Miss. We're told that this is going to be a very physical offense, not just in the run game, but physical in the pass game and in its blocking schemes there as well. And we're also told from Rich Rodriguez that he's not going to try and fit a square peg in a round hole, so to speak, that he's going to cater this offense to the strengths of his players. But he believes, and I do too, based on what I've seen from these guys earlier, that he's got the components he needs to run that run-based spread option. It's a big change. The tempo's still there, still an up-tempo offense, but you're going from the pass first and ask questions later offense of Phil Longo to really just trying to get it done on the ground. And, I think the running back room is pretty interesting for Ole Miss with Scotty Phillips returning. Isaiah Woolard, 2 guys with experience. Woolard being a very capable backup last year. Phillips almost gaining 1,000 yards, would have, had he not had the ankle injury at the end of the season that basically kept him out for most of the Texas A&M and Mississippi State games and all of Vanderbilt. So, it was a solid first season coming from junior college for Scotty Phillips. I think Ole Miss will transition pretty easily to a run-based spread option. The key for this group on offense is going to be the offensive line. Big losses there with Sean Rawlings not back, Greg Little not back. Only 2 starters returning. You have guys who've been in the program now in Royce Newman at left tackle, Bryce Matthews filling in at all spots, Eli Johnson as well at center. But these guys haven't done it in games yet. They haven't had to. They've played behind people. Now it's kind of their turn, but are they ready? Will these Ole Miss backs have to run away from people to gain yards, or will they be able to really man up and play that physical style of run offense they're talking to us about? Defensively, Mike McIntyre's 3-4. He believes it's going to help Ole Miss do better than they've done in the past against the run. Just really atrocious run defense numbers the last 2 years. A couple of guys to keep an eye on. Number one, Sam Williams, Northeast Community College, big defensive end there, 6'5", 255, now playing outside linebacker. He's gotten off to a good start this spring, really has been making plays, had a pick 6 in an earlier scrimmage. That's what we are told about Sam Williams. Jonathan Haynes, junior college safety, getting some time with the ones on the back end. So guys coming in that can help the program, in addition to Lakia Henry, the number 1 rated inside linebacker, coming into the position where they need the most help. He's not here yet. He'll be a guy that gets here in the summer, and look for an impact from him as well. But bottom line, Mike McIntyre believes this defense with these people can be better than what Ole Miss has shown the last couple of years. It's been a while since the Rebels have played good defense, so I know a lot of people are eager to see if McIntyre is correct. Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We thank you for clicking in with us today. We'll be on a more regular schedule now, so come back and join us next week.